Bobby, where are we going with this? We're going to Social Security, so just hang on. I'll be there in a minute. So in Egypt, Joseph was there and really unveiled to Pharaoh the original plan of Social Security. And if it had not been for Joseph putting together those stores of wheat and grain for the famine, we may not have had Jesus. I mean, that's how Jacob and the boys got to eat, is certainly how Judah got to eat. And so the cool thing to me, Hans, is that same wisdom, that the author of wisdom that gave Joseph that wisdom to set up that type of Social Security is still alive and well with us today, and helping people understand what looks like a complex system, but actually can meet the needs in some famine times.
Absolutely. Social Security is a blessing.
And in your book, there's this story, and I like the guy's name. It's Robert. But Robert thought he had the wisdom to do it, but he found out that there was more wisdom available to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's in my book, Robert and Sarah. Robert came to us. It was a couple of years ago. He had just retired. He was already 68, very well schooled, did all his research on Social Security, much more than most people do, and he'd already made the decision to wait to collect his Social Security check till he was 70. And by doing that, he was going to get 30% more for the rest of his life. And he had projected that he's going to live a long life, or his wife is, or between the two of them. So that was all really a good decision when you just looked at the one issue of waiting. So he's coming into us. We're doing a retirement plan. We're looking at his investments. We got him all set up with Medicare and on that, and he thought that was genius because that was real confusing to him. And then we moved over to Social Security and started listening to all his logic and rationale, and which I validated. And so we get into it a little bit further, and we find out that he has a 17-year-old son that's in high school. And, it just not that many 68-year-old gentlemen have a 17-year-old son, but this was his youngest son, and he and his wife, he was 50 and she was in her low 40s, and so now we're here at retirement, and what he didn't realize is he was able to collect half of his Social Security check in addition to his Social Security check. He's already missed 2 years of it, and there's one more year of it. So I don't want to get into the details of the story. I mean, he just missed out by his looking at one side of the decision. He just lost out on $36,000. And that day we got on the phone, called Social Security. We got him all signed up, and then we started his check 2 years earlier than he thought he was, because he's got to start his check to get the check for the son. And he was just happy as a clam when he left there.
And so that brings that FRA. I see that in the book. That's kind of a critical thing. And me being 62 right this minute, obviously I'm like, oh, how do I structure this exactly? I'll get some free advice and some right here.
Well, here's the deal. FRA stands for full retirement age. And since the beginning of Social Security, that was age 65. And a lot of consumers still think that they get their full retirement age Social Security at 65, but actually for the people retiring right now, FRA is 66. By the time I retire, which I'm 59, almost 60, when I retire, it's going to be 66 and 8 months. And I'm thinking by the time you retire, Robbie, it's probably going to be 66 and 2 or 4 months. So they're on a gradual program of raising it to 67. And just about the time, for the people that are younger than us, their full retirement age is 67, okay? So, you say, well, what does that matter for? Well, what that means is full retirement age, that's when you get your full Social Security check. You can start your Social Security as early as 62, but you're going to get a lot less, okay? Like something like 70% of what you otherwise would get, or 30% less. That's a broad generalization, but you would need to consult your own report for that. So don't anybody go by that, but it's substantially less.
But in Robert's story, he was going to wait till he was 70. Why?
Okay, so he was going to wait till he was 70, which his FRA was 66, full retirement age. And so he was waiting 4 years past his FRA. And he was doing that to get about 30% more in his Social Security check and then collect that 30% more for the rest of his life.
Now, immediately, there's so many things that are out there, and I'm trying to track with you. But he had a wife, Sarah. How is she affected if he waits till 70, and when does she come in? And is there some combination punch there?
Well, first of all, she had her own work history. And if she has her own work history and it has somewhat of a reasonable size to it, she can just collect on her own merit. So hers is not related to his. But in this case, she had taken off enough years from work from child rearing. His income was high enough that she was going to file for half of his check, which she couldn't do until she was 62, and she wasn't 62 yet in the story. Okay, I mean, this was 2 years ago. And so when she became 62, which was after he filed, she could file for half of his check, but that amount would be reduced because she's 62. She's not at her full retirement age. So to actually get half of his check, she would have to wait until 66 and so many months.
You see, this is why many counselors' plans succeed. You see that it takes some understanding, and we were talking a little while ago that even if your husband divorced you, and that the people, the wives of divorced husbands, are still eligible. This is part of the wisdom I think is fantastic for our listeners to know that, wow, your husband may have left you and whatever, but that doesn't mean you're out on his Social Security, right?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you're married for 10 years to a person and you're now divorced, or he's deceased or she's deceased, or if you're married to a primary earner for 10 years and you're not remarried, or if you're remarried, it's not some period of time has passed, you are eligible to file against their Social Security check just like you were still married. Even if they've remarried and you got, if this is the case as a man, if you got two women, they can each collect a check based upon his earnings and their age.
And it doesn't affect his Social Security at all, is what you were saying?
It has no effect on his Social Security.
So your ex-husband won't even get mad at you.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised because sometimes we have to contact these ex-husbands to just find out their status and to give some stuff to the Social Security Administration so they can get the benefit. And that's the first thing they want to know is, this isn't going to cost them. We usually contact them through the kids, but this stuff's complicated. And it really matters because I'm going to tell you one other thing. When this ex-husband, we have examples of this, when he passes away, let's say he passes away at 70, so from 66 to 70, you're collecting half his check, not out of his money, you're just getting it from the government, and then he dies, you now get all of his check for the rest of his life, and if he was remarried, she would get all of his check too, so the government's paying twice on his check after his death.
Okay, you're listening to the voice of Hans Scheil. He's a certified financial planner. As you can tell, that's a very helpful thing if you're looking into these issues. And he's the author of the Complete Cardinal Guide to Planning for and Living in Retirement. And we want to mention that if you go to cardinalguide.com, there's all these phenomenal resources. And you're listening to this going, Robbie, I can't keep up with this. I can't take notes fast enough. Well, the good news, man, is that all the pages to this book are absolutely free right now today. If you go to the Cardinal Guide webpage, you click on the 7 worries, you're going to see the first worry is Social Security. And so when you click down on that, as you scroll down, you'll see that you can get a free PDF of that entire chapter of the book where a lot of these things are outlined, and you can get these resources, absolutely free. Again, we're so grateful that you're listening today, but there's a lot of wisdom that's available, and Solomon said it's crying out in the streets. But it's helpful. I just can't say how much I'm thrilled that God gave us you to be on for our listeners to be able to glean some of this wisdom that's out there.
Yeah, what I'd like for you to get out of this show is you need a little bit of education, and it's helpful to go to somebody other than the Social Security Administration as a professional that understands this stuff like we do, and to give you some advice on what would be the best filing strategy for you and your spouse. It's just kind of that simple, and it's not same answer, and it's not good enough to talk to see what your friend did or your sister did or your brother did, because they're not you. They've got a different situation. Everybody's is different, and we can help you, or a professional that's trained in Social Security, as I am, can do the same.
And so, their website, again, is cardinalguide.com, and at that website you're going to see these 7 worries. And these shows that we're doing, the segments right now, are on these 7 worries. So today, Social Security. Last week we did Medicare. The week before it was long-term care. But we got more to come, right, huh?
Oh, we got lots more to come. There's 7 content chapters in the book and in the workbook. And what we're doing each week for 7 weeks is we're talking about a different one of them. And this week is Social Security. And we also talk about how they all relate to each other. So on every show, to some degree, we're going to be talking about all 7 of them.
So, yeah, and they really do relate to Medicare, and Social Security are closely linked as to long-term care, which is the first show that we had here a few weeks ago. And so that's a big part of this as well.
Well, and so is your IRA, so is your pension check, so is your life insurance, the taxes that you're paying in retirement, income taxes, estate taxes. All this stuff mixes together like soup when you're retired.
Right. And so, and today's subject, Social Security, there's a lot of opportunities and different options that you have. And I found out just this week, my father's 87. But he's continued to work because he just loves to work, and retiring is just not part of his vocabulary. And he was telling me how he had to go meet with the Social Security department because they were still taking part of his Social Security because he had an income.
Yeah, they're supposed to stop that at FRA, at full retirement age. So they were supposed to stop that at 65. So
well, here he is at 87, and something to do with he wouldn't get his full benefit based on his income. So you're looking at me like he needs to call you.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about him before, and something doesn't sound right there.
Yeah, he actually went down to meet with him just the other day, and he was telling me, and I was like, whoa, I didn't know. I thought if you waited, and certainly he did wait until I think he was 70 before he began to. So he was way past the full retirement age.
Let's take this up after the break.
Okay, we'll do that when we come back. More of Finishing Well with certified financial planner Hans Scheil. All right. Well, we don't have to take it up because it's obviously
well, it actually is a point because
wisdom and experience in these areas to talk about some of the things that can happen. And right before the break, Hans, we were talking about, what happens if you do decide to take your Social Security early, that is a way that even till 87 you could still be paying.
Well, here's the thing. If you're not working and you need the money, take it early, okay? Just let me repeat myself. If you're not working and you need the money, take it. Okay? Just I mean, and that's what people do, and that's what it's there for.
Right. It was like Joseph's brothers. I mean, they needed the food, so you need to go get it. Right.
So we were just talking about your dad before the break, and, I want to just put some criteria on that. So let's talk about taking it early. Okay? So if you do take it early, and you do that by choice, maybe you could figure out how to live without the money. And so, what have you done to yourself? Well, number one, you've forever diminished your Social Security check, because if you take it early, and you say take it at 62 or 63, you now have a smaller Social Security, and your check will be smaller for life. If you pass away, which you're probably going to do at some point in the future, and
there's
you pass
about a 100%
away,
chance unless Jesus comes.
Yeah. And then your spouse lives beyond you, and they are now, your spouse is now going to get your full Social Security check for the rest of their life. And if you've taken it early, you've forever diminished it. You've forever diminished their survivor pension as well. Okay? That's not good. Then the third thing is, if you're working still, but you just want that money, you just want that Social Security check, and you want to start collecting it, you're going to actually have to give part of it back for any year you make more than $16,000 in service income. So that doesn't count your investment income or pension withdrawals or whatever. But if you just go out and have a job like you have here at the radio station, and you collect, let's say $50,000 or $40,000 or whatever, you've made $24,000 too much as far as Social Security and the IRS is concerned, and so you're going to have to give back part or all of your diminished Social Security check. So the bottom line on that is you don't want to take it early unless you have to, okay? And then once you take it early, you're kind of stuck with it. And I'm thinking that maybe in your dad's situation, he thinks that they're collecting, give back to him because he's working. I don't really think that's going on. What I think is he took his Social Security early 30 years ago or 25 years ago when he was 62, and he's paying for it for the rest of his life. So he thinks they're making a deduction from it. Now, it also could be Medicare taxes. I mean, they deduct Medicare and they deduct Part D. It could be all kinds of things. So we don't really want to speculate. If your dad wants me to look into this, you can just bring it into me or
right.
give
But
me
that
a
brings
call.
up a really good point that we've talked about before, that all these things work together, that Medicare is involved with Social Security in just that way, right?
Absolutely. It's all together. And your other sources of income are all together. We talk about the three-legged stool in retirement. It's number one, it's Social Security. Number two, it's your personal savings, is the money that you've saved either in a retirement account. And then, it's a pension if you have, and a lot of people don't have those anymore. But you know what a three-legged stool does if one of the legs is missing or broken?
They call her Eileen.
Yeah.
So what, Hans, what happens when my spouse dies if we're both receiving Social Security?
Okay. So you're collecting two checks. Your wife's getting a check. Robbie's getting a check. You're living off of that money. And then let's say your check is more than her check. Okay. But you're probably not looking at it that way. They're both her check. And you just got, if yours is $2,000 and hers is $1,000, you just got $3,000 coming in, okay? You pass away, what happens is the smaller check goes away. So it's real easy to figure out. You pass away, she was getting $1,000, you were getting $2,000. She now gets your check, but hers goes away. If she dies first, same thing happens. Smaller check goes away. So if she dies, her $1,000 a month goes away, and you just keep getting your check. But anyway, either way, when a spouse dies, there's a significant loss in income.
All right, you're listening to Hans Scheil. This is Finishing Well, and it's brought to you by CardinalGuide.com. And the reason why we say that is because we want you to know that all these resources are there at CardinalGuide.com. You can go there and get the ebook. It's not like $1.99, is it, Hans?
Yeah,
it's not expensive.
It's inexpensive.
It's around $2 for you.
Yeah.
Can get the ebook, or you can get the workbook that goes with that. Of course, even on this show, you can get this chapter absolutely free. Just go to the 7 Worries tab and scroll down there under more information, and you can just get the PDF of
Right
this.
under Social Security, you can get both PDFs.
Absolutely. They're easy to get, contact information, all that stuff. It's at cardinalguide.com. But we also want to point out that you just tuned into the show and you went, man, I need to know this stuff. How do I get it, Robbie? Well, cardinalguide.com, they've got the show, Finishing Well. You go over to the podcast page. You can not only listen to the show on Social Security that we're doing today, you can listen to the one on long-term care or on the one on Medicare, and there's many more to come, right on?
Absolutely. We're going to go through all the book, and then we're going to start over again
So,
and keep talking about it. And you don't need to master this stuff. You just need to, I wrote the book. We're on this radio show to raise awareness of this stuff, to demystify it, to boil it down. And I know it seems easy for us. It seems disorienting to people that try to go into there. And what we try to do for clients is really just sit down with them, figure out what they're trying to accomplish, and point out some things that they hadn't possibly seen within all of these areas. I mean, Social Security, Medicare, long-term care, their IRAs. I mean, that's what we're going to be talking about on the next show. And then their investments, and which IRAs are part of that, but there's separate things about IRAs that make them special. Estate planning, life insurance, just what we were just talking about. When one of the spouses passes away, there's going to be a reduction in income. And that doesn't matter whether it happens at 65 or 85. And that's where perhaps a small amount of life insurance, just to get people over the hump for a year or two, where they would replace that loss in income so they can make some adjustments. That's another chapter. And then, of course, we go over income taxes. So that's what we're all about. That's what the book's all about. And we're all about giving advice and helping people. You don't really need to treat this like a college course that you got to memorize all this stuff, because you can always consult a professional like myself.
Well, and that's, when I sold cars, people could, if they wanted to, they could go online, I suppose, and try to figure out what was the best car for them and all that stuff. Or they could come see somebody who really, in my heart, was always trying to help you figure out the best car for you and your family in the best way and the best financing. I spent 40 years learning how to do that and gaining the wisdom like Joseph had of Social Security.
Sure.
and wanting to provide that to anybody who would ask for it. And so now here's this wisdom. It's available. Hans, you've spent your life learning this stuff and seeing what happened in different circumstances with different people, and being able to leverage that now to help brothers and sisters in Christ. And that's, or anybody that really comes to you because it's what kind of God gave you a passion for.
He absolutely did. And I've been doing this over 40 years myself, and I started out selling Medicare supplements when I was 18 in 1976, going in and seeing people 3 times my age, more than 3 times my age. And that was pretty scary at that time. But, you kind of tend to learn what they need after you're doing it for a lot of years. Now, something that just came to mind is I had a client in my office this week, 2 clients, husband and wife, both 58. And they had really decided that he's going to retire at 62. Okay, and she's somebody that read the book. She was just in and really excited about this. She even read the introductory chapter again the morning where she had an appointment with us, just because she wanted to be up on my resume. And it's very flattering. The book and some of the stories in there move some people. So anyhow, she was planning on Social Security at 62. For both of them, because they're both about the same age. He's going to take that reduced check, and then she's going to get half the reduced check, and they're going to just live their merry way. And these folks have saved a lot of money. They're savers. They're to be commended for that. And they have substantial money that they could afford to take that reduction. And they had really picked the age of 62 because he knew that that's the earliest you can get Social Security. Well, when we ran all the numbers on them, and she wanted some preliminary information, because she's making decisions about long-term care right now, and she wants to get that done before we get done with the whole thing. But in the preliminary information, we kind of determined these people, this couple is going to get $84,000 a year between the two of them in Social Security by waiting till age 70, okay? And so I'm sitting there, and I tell her that, I show her that, and she's like, man, and when we ran the numbers on that, it was less than half of that they would get by starting it at 62. So it was right around $40-some thousand a year. So there's a huge, now keep in mind, they're doing without that income for 8 years. So, what we're proposing, first of all, they're not there yet. And we don't have to do that at 62 if things change. But we're just giving them a plan, and we're looking through it. It's like definitely better for them to wait unless either one of them had some reason to think they were going to meet an early death, that was, in their future. So
that's one of those things that we've got to get to, because we don't have a lot of time, is how Social Security affects long-term care. And that's why they came to you originally. And at 62, that's something they really do need to be thinking about.
Well, and what I'm going to tell you is I do a lot of just checked into the nursing home long-term care planning, okay? I mean, mom or dad, we just put them in there. Now we're going to dig through their stack of their money and figure out how we're going to pay for this. You know what the first check we go to is? The Social Security check. It's something that every senior gets. So if the nursing home costs $7,000 a month and dad gets $1,800 a month, well, we can take $7,000 minus $1,800 because we're going to just sign that over to them. And we got $5,200 a month. I mean, it's just as simple as that. That's the first down payment on the nursing home. That's what the Social Security check is.
And so these things they're like alphabet soup. That's what he talked about. But we want to tell you, you've been listening to Finishing Well with certified financial planner Hans Scheil. And, the book is just a phenomenal resource. It's right there at cardinalguide.com. It's the complete Cardinal Guide to Planning and Living in Retirement. There's a accompanying workbook. They're really, really inexpensive, provide you all this wonderful information. And then, really, when you go with an author, any author, give them a little feedback. Go back to Amazon and go ahead and rate the book. Give them some stars on whatever you think. Tell them the truth, but it means so much to anybody to get feedback along those lines. If you go to cardinalguide.com, there at Finishing Well on the radio show, you got something you want us to talk about, something you want us to stop talking about, whatever you got, it's all there at cardinalguide.com. Hans, it's been a lot of fun again. We'll see you next time on Finishing Well.
Well, it has, and I just want to let all the listeners know I divide my time between Raleigh, Greensboro, and Charlotte. I have offices in those three cities, and most of our clients do business with us over the phone. We work in all 50 states and D.C. We work all over the country. We're licensed, and we'd love to hear from you, and we don't charge you anything to talk to you, the first time.
Yeah, just give them a call.
Yeah.